Welcome to a very, very, very special episode of Bledsoe Said So. We are joined by my friend Dan Brulé. Woohoo! Woohoo! Yes. A very luminous being. And I'll get into here in a minute about how we met and that amazing experience. But Dan, before I forget, could you let the listeners know your books, your social media? Because I don't want to forget. I'd like to kind of plant that seed in the beginning.
Well, Just Breathe, Mastering Breathwork for Success in Life, Love, Business, and Beyond by Simon & Schuster. It's available in every good bookstore. We have an Audible version of it. And my website is breathmastery.com. So it's hard to Google breathwork and not have my name pop up.
Yeah, it's true. I'm so happy that you joined our show. This is like really cool for me. And I told you this in person, but just for the sake of the listener, I'll run through this briefly. So we met in Wisconsin at the Contact Modalities XPO. And in full disclosure, my sister told me in advance that you were going to be there and that you were a really big deal in this space. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, this guy, Dan Brulé, is going to be there. I have to meet this fella. And it was the weirdest thing. My dad did this, and I didn't know what you look like because I'm such a busy person. I didn't look you up in advance. I was like, I'm going to meet you there. You know what I mean? My dad finished his panel. I walk out the door, and you're like right there speaking to us. And I heard your name, and you could probably attest to this. I freaked out. Oh my God, it's you. I wanted to meet you. Come with me right now. And I grabbed you and I yanked you over and brought you to my sister. And I was like, this is Dan. And I just feel like from there on out, it was chemistry. And, you know, it was really cool to meet you and to have the experience of becoming your friend at this conference and having, and I will say, you know, for the listeners' sake, that I was very blessed to experience a private session with you, which was very profound. So anyway, enough about me and I just wanted them to know how we met and, you know, how it was organic and it was this really cool thing. But I want to talk more about your background in the breathwork space. You know?
Yeah, happy to do that. I'd like to say how I actually met you.
Okay.
I know your father was signing books, and I had seen him just sort of coming and going. But I recognize an open heart from a football field away. So that was the first thing that drew me to your father, and then to your family, because I felt that heart and that love. From all of you. So I was very pleased to meet you. It was a nice surprise. And I just actually finished your father's book. And
Wow.
Louise is actually, since I'm traveling and I'm passing through, she's going to read it before I leave. So she's actually in the other room reading it right now.
Wow.
And and I study breathing, and I've been a missionary for the breath, and I'm always looking for, you know, how can we apply breath work to make the world a better place, make ourselves healthier, wake people up, vent stress, deal with anxiety, manage emotions, use it to develop mindfulness. And so I'm a missionary for the breath. I have been my whole life. And it ain't about to stop anytime soon.
You're an amazing energy. Like being with you that whole weekend was the highlight for me. And on the episode of our show that just came out today at the time of recording this, so this episode that we're recording now will come out in a few weeks most likely. But our episode that released today was about the contact modalities. And you know, I know you're a busy guy, but if you ever happen to hear it, you'll hear how I was just gushing about, you know, getting to meet you and have that experience with you. It was very profound. And just like you said about my dad and my family, that you feel that heart from a football field away. I did feel the very same thing. Just, you know, becoming your friend. I just was like, oh my God, I've never met anybody like this. And I knew that I had to learn from you. And the weird thing, Dan, is for a good year now, I've been thinking to myself, I want to learn more about the breath, because I've been going through the journey of sort of becoming a meditation instructor. I told you a little bit about this, but it's through sound. And that's very cool. But in my mind, I was thinking, but there's something a little more ancient. Maybe there was a time when they didn't have instruments or didn't have, records and vinyls and CDs. What did they have? The breath, right? So this has been on my mind. I want to get into this. And then, of course, with my crazy journey, I bump into you, probably the very best person on planet Earth to learn from about the breath. So it's just like, no surprise there, but yeah.
Well, all the ancient yogis and the ancient Taoists and the Buddha and the early, people were just stumbling along. It took years, decades, generations. It took lifetimes to master some of this stuff. And now these days with wearable technology and, monitors and stuff, you combine technology with spirituality and you can speed things up quite a bit. So that's been happening in the breathwork world. I spent a lot of time in India, a lot of time in China. I've tried to westernize a lot of the Eastern approaches and, make it more palatable for the Western mind. We don't really have in the West any sort of spiritual tradition around the breathing, but every ancient religion, every genuine spiritual tradition makes use of the breath, honors the breath, talks about the breath, recognizes the power of the breath. And if you just look at the word inspiration, expiration, respiration, the root of that word is spirit. So it's not an accident. When you begin to breathe, you unlock spiritual potential. You connect to your source. And in the process of practicing breath work, you become more meditative. You develop meditative awareness. Your intuition gets better. You can connect more deeply. Just on a very practical level, more of the world comes in contact with you through the breath than you can possibly wrap your arms around. I mean, if you were to take the surface area of the lungs, including all the alveoli, those little microscopic air sacs, it's half of a tennis court.
And wow.
Right. And when you breathe in, you are filling yourself with the world, literally. I mean, all of the universe is pouring into you. And molecules of air that the Buddha breathed, that Jesus breathed, that all the saints and great warriors and mystics and Caesar and Moses, and some of the literal molecules of air that circulated in their bodies is circulating in our body. And that's information. Energy is information. And so breathing kind of, it clears our antenna so we can actually start to pick up more subtle energies. We're more fine-tuned. We're less reactive. We're more sensitive. Because most people, there's a lot of trauma trapped in the cells of their body, in their nervous system. And it accumulates like boiling a frog, Yeah. We get less and less resilient. We get less and less alive. And but maybe if we can open up the power of our breath, it affects longevity, and it's unarguable now. The Framingham Heart Study, very famous study, back Framingham, Massachusetts. They followed several thousand guys through life. That's 50 years old now, longer, 60, 70 years old. And out of that study came a lot of the lifestyle factors that affect heart disease. A lot of the medications and protocols were developed using data from that study. But there was so much conflicting information. You had guys who lived to be 100, who they smoked and they drank and they were meat eaters. And at 102, they're still alive. And then you got people who did everything right. They were vegan, vegetarians, whatever, and they dropped when they were 48.
Yeah.
So, but the only data point that had no exceptions across the board was respiratory capacity, and linking respiratory capacity to longevity and overall health. And if you look at the graph of respiratory capacity, the average person reaches their peak respiratory capacity between 27, 25, 26 years old. And then for every decade of life, they lose 10 to 15% of their respiratory capacity. And so if you put that graph of respiratory function and you put it on the same graph of life expectancy, they follow each other. They mirror each other. And so very early on, I realized, wow, if I can keep up my respiratory capacity, I'm going to bump up my longevity curve. And it's the only data point out of that study that was true across all people, across all religions, ages, everything. If you maintain your respiratory capacity, let it grow to peak and then maintain it, it's guaranteed your odds for living longer and being healthier are increased. There's just no argument about it. So it's just a matter of practice and being motivated to actually do breathing practices, which aren't complicated. And a lot of them, you get really high off them. So you need a lot of discipline. I've had a lot of people sit up from sessions and go, wow, I've taken a lot of drugs to feel like this. We got a pharmacy in our head and it'll produce whatever chemicals, and DMT and brain waves are affected. Chemistry is affected, cognitive abilities, intuition, emotions. So you get your handle on your breath and wow, you can deal with just about everything else.
Yeah. Can I give you a report?
Yeah.
So when we were together last weekend, right? And then I obviously spent quite a bit of time with you, and you had 3 workshops that weekend?
Yeah.
The first day I wasn't in town for it. The second one I made, and then the third one I wasn't able to make, and I regretted it because you did a session. But then you were, gracious enough to come and do a private session with us. So I want to report on my life since that. You said some things that stuck with me that were very profound that I had never heard before. And some things I had heard before, but hearing them from you, it was so much more simple and it made more sense. So I'll just give you the report. So last week after Wisconsin, when we all left and went our separate ways, I went home for one day. And then I turned around and I had a 6-hour drive back to the Monroe Institute. I was there for like 2 days doing some things with them. And I stayed up really late, both nights in a row, like 2 a.m., hanging out with people, getting up at like 7 the next day, both days. I was exhausted after being in Wisconsin, all this travel for 2 weeks. I was exhausted. So on the last day of being at Monroe, I had a 6-hour drive home, right? Halfway through the drive, I was so tired. I literally was fighting falling asleep. And I was like blasting heavy metal music because I just like heavy metal music. That's just naturally what I like. And it stimulates me when I'm driving. And I'm just like fighting to stay awake. I'm desperate to stay awake. I was so tired. And I had like 3 hours left. I was miserable. And it came to me. Dan said, if you want energy, yeah, I'm telling on you what you said. Dan said, if you want energy, take a big inhale, short exhale. Big inhale, short exhale, and vice versa. And I started doing this, and I started doing the big inhale and forcing it out. Big inhale, forcing it out. And I'm not kidding you. I was just like wide awake for the rest of the 3-hour drive. I felt alert. I felt like, oh my God, this worked. This really worked, and it kind of shifted my thinking. Because I'm a person who loves caffeine, who loves energy drinks, who loves coffee. And I was at that point where I was drinking so much and it wasn't working. And I was at that point of no return to where it's like, I could have all the caffeine in the world. It wouldn't work. Breathe for a minute and I was just energized. And that was profound for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's why it's taught and practiced in the first responder world and special forces and military and Navy SEALs. I mean, there's a great principle in the Navy SEAL community, Special Forces community, that says when you think you have no more juice left in your battery, you still have 40%. You just haven't learned how to tap that. And most people, unless they're pushed to, they never discover that what they think is empty isn't empty at all. There's still a lot of juice in your battery. You just got to learn how to access it. And then it comes down to generating energy, which is what breathing is all about. We're getting energy from the breath all the time. The problem is most people's breathing is like the pilot light in an oven. It'll keep you alive, but you can't cook anything with it. And so you gotta sort of take over from the autopilot and then do some breathing to ramp up or calm down or whatever's required. And then each time you do that, you're training your breathing system, and pretty soon it starts to really work better on its own.
Guys, we are so excited to tell you about our first brand deal with Stigma Hemp. We are so pumped to be working with them. These people are amazing. We've been working with them for a couple of months now. They have an amazing product. It's a family-owned business, and we really, really believe in the product. Ryan, tell them about some of the products that Stigma got.
Yeah, so they got these delicious THC teas, seltzer waters, gummies. I would personally say they're the best gummies I've ever tasted.
I would too.
In my humble opinion. And that milligram is just that perfect dose to have a good night without all the, the freaky thoughts that gummies usually bring. No, but seriously, it's a great product. Josh is a great guy, the founder of Stigma Hemp, and I really am excited to partner with them, especially knowing that he is personally very interested in UFOs and the UFO space. And I just couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, guys, they have CBD, they have THC, they have capsules, they have gummies, they have drinks. They have these awesome CBD and THC drinks that are 0 sugar, 0 calories, 0 alcohol. It's just pure either CBD or THC, and it's all in like relatively low doses, so it's manageable. It's a really, really good product. We've tested it ourselves
many times.
It's fantastic. They even have like sleepy time stuff that has melatonin. We really, truly, actually love this product. It's amazing. So we got a little special offer for our listeners.
Yes, we do.
Tell them about it, Ryan.
Go to stigmahemp.com and use code BSS at checkout, and you'll get a nice little 30% bump off your price there. And, get you some tins of gummies and just have a good time with them.
Stigmahemp.com, code BSS. Get that.
I mean, I every time I used to become tense, get, a little tight, tense coming, I would deliberately take a couple of breaths, shake it off. And I train that so often now that if tension builds up in my body, I don't even notice it, but my breath gets triggered automatically. And I notice this breath and it just vented that tension that was building up. I wasn't even aware of it yet, but the breathing is like the canary in the coal mine. Your breath is the first thing to go out of balance when anything else in your system goes out of balance. So the more intimate connection you have with your breath, you can stay ahead of a lot of things.
Yeah.
So.
Dan, you're obviously so knowledgeable, and it's really fascinating to hear everything that you've picked up. I'm curious, when did you realize that breathing was such a profound and powerful thing? Because a lot of people may not think about it, but I'm curious.
I've had so many moments through my life that just were meant to reinforce that, to make it clear what my mission is. I mean, I started in Catholic school in kindergarten, and on Fridays, the priest, the Monsignor, would visit all the classrooms. And the first day he came, he talked about the book of Genesis and how God formed the body of man, took the dust of the earth, and then breathed into man the nostrils, the breath of life. I mean, that just lit something up in me. I have vague memories of it, but I knew it was like, why isn't everybody excited? Think about that. When we breathe, God is breathing into us. Why isn't everybody jumping up and down right now? And I think I got a little too animated. I have vague memories, but I remember the priest pushing my shoulders down, trying to sit me in my chair, and the nun was tapping me on my head, trying to calm me down. I guess I got too animated, but it lit. It was a spark. And then I became the kid who was, organizing breath holding competitions in the schoolyard.
Wow.
And, hyperventilating and squeezing each other until we passed out. I was just obsessed with the breathing. And I can't tell you how many times I got the wind knocked out of me in sports and fights and falling off a bicycle, climbing a fence, whatever. I mean, and near drowning experiences. I've had a number of near drowning experiences. And the last one, I had to be resuscitated. And my first job was as an X-ray technician. And one of the easiest x-rays is the chest x-ray. So I was getting all the chest x-rays as the newbie. And when you take a chest x-ray, you tell the person, taking a deep breath, hold it, and then you click their picture. And so I had to watch people carefully, because if they were breathing, the x-ray would come out blurry. So as I gave everyone those same instructions, and a couple of thousand people over 2 years, I watched them take a breath and hold it. And everybody did something different. The muscles they used, the expression on their face, how they coordinated their breathing. And I started to see that everyone's personality is reflected in their breathing pattern, and their relationship to life and their relationship to their body is being expressed in their relationship to the breath. And then I learned CPR as an x-ray technician. I took a weekend CPR course, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I was so surprised to show up and there was no one else from the x-ray department taking this course. And I thought, doesn't everybody want to learn this? And 2 weeks later, I was with a portable x-ray machine up in the intensive care ward. And the guy I came to do a chest x-ray on, he died while I was in the room. His heart stopped. He flatlined. That beep, beep went to beep. And so there I was, the only one in the room. So my training kicked in. I remember from the class a couple of weeks earlier, I pumped his chest. At the time, it was 5 compressions, 1 breath, 5 compressions, 1. And then I blew into him, and he blinked and woke up.
Wow.
I mean, a freaking miracle. The guy was clinically dead, fixed dilated pupils, no pulse, no breathing, looked dead, ashen gray. And I blow into him and he wakes up and blinks. I mean, I was vibrating for days. It was, I mean, being part of a miracle, the miracle of breath, the miracle of life. And then when I went into the military, I got into deep sea diving and underwater rescue and special operations. So I was practicing breath control. I was practicing breath holding. And I learned that in order to manage your arousal, manage your mental state, your emotional state, you need to manage your breathing. When you get pushed and when the poop hits the fan, what can you do? You know, you don't grab your weapon, you don't grab the radio, you can't call your mother. You get a handle on your breath.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happens, everything else comes into focus, everything else lines up. And so I realized that, wow, you know, it's easier to keep up than it is to catch up. And so I just became a lot more conscious of my breathing. And because I was then training emergency rescue people, I was training special operations and submarine escape people and underwater salvage and everything. And I was very often, I would be attached to a team, and I didn't know these guys. I was like the pro from Dover that they just flew in to take part in the mission. I had demolition skills and I had surgery skills, so I could blow people up and then I could sew them together again. And I had a lot of other training, and so I ended up on these special projects. And I was really concerned that, you know, if things really go squarely, how are these guys going to perform? Who do I have to worry about? Because I noticed, being in enough emergencies, that people fall into 2 categories. One of them, they're like a chicken with their head cut off, running around, doing a whole bunch of useless stuff, yelling a whole bunch of crazy things that isn't helping anybody. And that kind of person, I need to be a human straitjacket. I need to sit them down and shut them up. And then you have the other ones who just freeze. So they're like zombies. And, you know, hey, a train is coming, and you watch the whole thing happen and go, they just had to move 3 inches. Well, and so I needed to know which of these, who was going to go off in which direction. I want to know ahead of time, because one of them, I need to kick him in the butt, give him something to do, slap him, shake him into moving. And the other one, I need to wrestle and make sit still. So I discovered that when I pushed them to their limit with stress, and they would fall into 1 or 2 categories. They either overbreathed, they hyperventilated, or they underbreathed, they held their breath. And sure enough, those overbreathers, guess which ones they were? They were the ones running around crazy. And the people who hold their breath, they were the ones who froze and didn't move. So I was applying what I learned by observing people's breathing patterns, especially under stress, how they're going to perform and which way they're going to go out of balance. And I could keep them from going into dysfunction. I was training guys underwater. We had a radio on the surface. We're watching them, and I could tell them, hey, slow your breathing down, or hey, take a few breaths. You could follow breath to breath and know which way they get out of balance. And that saved my life, saved a lot of other people's lives. And it goes deeper than that, because every emotional state, every psychological state, every physiological chemical state has a corresponding breathing pattern, a very specific breathing quality. And we know that when you're angry and upset and afraid, you breathe differently when you're peaceful and calm and relaxed. Anybody can see the difference. And when your state changes, your breathing pattern changes. And so the magic, the power of breathwork is it's a two-way street. By changing my breathing pattern, I can change my state. And so that's, and there are breathing patterns associated with very high ecstatic spiritual states. And there are breathing patterns and breathing qualities that are associated with sublime and profoundly peaceful states. And so by getting a handle on your breathing, you get a handle on everything else.
Wow. Wow. So it's always been a part of your life ever since you were little. And then in every step along the way, it's like the breath was always intimately involved in whatever you were doing.
Like a spirit of breath grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and just kept sticking my nose in the breathing. No matter how, whenever I tried to get into something else, life just turned me back to the breath. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's amazing. There were really a pretty high number of things that you said when we were together last weekend that stuck with me. And several things that raised alarms to me that showed me, okay, this is like you swim in these waters and you're very comfortable here. And when we were having these, this private session and you were guiding us, first of all, oh my God, that was an hour and a half. I've been sitting here going through this training of how to like prepare people to do guided meditations, on a headset. And here you are. Yeah, sure. Let's do a private session. Where do you want to go? Let's sit here. Great. Let's just get comfortable. And then, you just guided us through this amazing experience off the cuff. And it was just like, it was so profound. And there were some things you said during that, like, there was one moment when I think you noticed that my dad's eyes were being really active. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And you said, for those of us that see things that others cannot see, we must relax our forehead muscles. And you rubbed your hand on his forehead and you made him relax his head. But the thing is, in that moment, what none of us in the room knew was that my dad was out of body, seeing you from the other side of the room, watching you walk over to him and touch his forehead. And that whole experience to me was so profoundly spiritual that it in the time that night happened, and since knowing that we were going to do this interview, my head has been spinning with questions. What other kinds of things have you seen? Having taught 300,000 plus people, this is probably, oh yeah, that happened last Tuesday.
Yeah, no, it's very rare that things come up in a session that haven't come up in other people.
Right.
But you have extreme versions of them, examples of them. I have so many miracle stories connected to the breath, and just to be there present to witness them, and maybe even was part of having the miracle happen. I didn't cause it, but I was part of the mix, that the perfect storm that was required, right? I did my little part. But most of the time it's just watching the power of the breath do its work when people open and relax and allow it to take over. We're so accustomed to being in control, being traumatized and hurt. We close off, we tighten up, we withdraw, and all of that separates us from life. It separates us from the source. And so breathing is a way to open our heart if it's been hurt, and open our mind if you're stuck in a box, and open and relax the body if it's caught in illness, diseases, programs. So breathing affects every level: mechanical, structural, heart rate. You control your heart by controlling your breathing, control your blood pressure, you control your focus. That's why in the East, pranayama, which is the Hindu science of breath, it was developed as a way to regulate the mind. So the ancient yogis realized that a chaotic, wild mind is connected to chaotic, wild breathing. And as soon as you control your breathing, something starts to shift in your mind, in your brain activity. And so the original purpose of controlling breathing was to regulate the mind. So it has a direct effect. And now the science is unarguable, because when you are breathing, you're playing with carbon dioxide, for example. And carbon dioxide is a volatile acid. So it plays a key role in the pH balance of your body, acid-base balance. So if you hyperventilate, for example, and you blow off carbon dioxide and you reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in your cellular tissues in your blood, all of the microvessels constrict. And that includes the little microvessels that feed the brain and get oxygen and nutrients to the brain. It includes bronchial vessels, like people who have asthma and their bronchial vessels spasm, and they have to take a steroid to dilate those bronchial vessels. Well, carbon dioxide will do that. If you can tolerate the CO2 level rising in your body, this carbon dioxide is going to dilate, do all the work of those steroids, those dangerous steroids that people use with asthma inhalers. The carbon dioxide will do that. But the problem is people can't cope with, they can't tolerate the symptoms of air hunger. And that's a basic practice, to get comfortable with the symptoms of air hunger so you can gradually get used to higher levels of CO2. Peak levels of CO2 in exhaled air should be around, 5%, 30, 40 millimeters of mercury. For most people, it's below 4%. There's 4%, and it's way down 20 millimeters of mercury. And that's responsible for all kinds of cognitive deficits. It sets us up to be susceptible to all kinds of illnesses that are based on needing that pure balance of acid and base. And so if your unconscious breathing patterns are upsetting your chemistry, then you can expect a whole lot of reactions, a chain reaction from that. And as soon as you get your breathing back in order, you kind of reset everything. And but no one is trained to breathe, and most people don't give their breathing any attention until and unless they have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But if you work in high stakes life and death situations, you're trained to breathe. First responders, special forces, SEAL teams, you name it, corporate executives. You need to command a room. You got important presentations, artists, musical performers, psychotherapists who need to stay grounded and not take on the energy of other people. Everybody, needs breathing. We all have our high stakes experiences. We all have our day-to-day stresses. It might not be at the level of some of these extreme jobs and populations, but don't tell me what's big in my life. The next important conversation I have with my teenage child is everything. And I want to be in a place where I'm open and receptive and calm so I can communicate and not be reacting emotionally. And that's where breathing comes in handy.
Yeah. I would love to know any sort of tips for like breathing for grounding, for not taking on other people's energy. That would be very helpful for me.
Don't think in terms of trying to protect yourself from other people's energy. Get really good at having it pass through without making any noise or triggering any reactions in your system.
Okay.
So get good at and that's what happens with every breath. You take it in, it goes right back out. No problem. Now, if you take it in and it starts bumping into things and poking on things and things are attached to it or resist it, then now you're creating a complex, and now you got to do something about it. I'm a big believer in belief systems, right? If I believe I'm surrounded by evil monsters who are going to eat me as soon as my guard is down, that's the kind of world I'm going to live in. I create my reality. And if I have a trust in the safety of the universe and that the influences around me are loving, I'm going to be more relaxed, and I'm going to create a different reality for myself based on my beliefs. Thoughts become things, and we have to pay attention. I have a moral obligation because I know that the mind gets its creative power from the breath, and if I help somebody increase the power of their breath, they become more creative. If they're negative, they're going to become more negative. If they're violent, they're going to become more violent. And so I don't want to support that. So along with breath work, we're doing heart work. We're doing consciousness work. We're working on our beliefs. We're working on our attitudes, our emotions. And it has to go hand in hand with breath work. The universe wouldn't give us power unless we earned it, unless it's safe with us. And so, I breathing is a lot more than breathing, but it's the source and the center in my life for everything.
Yeah. No, I'm resonating with everything you're saying. I completely agree.
I'm curious, for those people that you mentioned, some people are just kind of unconsciously or subconsciously like breath starved, or they're unconsciously just not breathing. They're holding their breath naturally. What is the first step to like retraining that sort of thing? I can relate to that. I naturally, I'm curious.
It's a universal thing. I mean, everybody's breathing all the time, but most people are only aware of it 1%, 2%, 5% of the time.
Yeah.
And they're only aware of it if and when it causes a problem. Otherwise, they're oblivious to it. And so we're not taught breathing in school. We're not, unless you had some training, meditation, martial arts, something musical, performing, where you actually started to do some kind of breathing training. But even then, a lot of people, it stays locked in that particular arena. They don't take it into their everyday life. They only apply it in those areas where they were trained to apply it. So everybody's 1,000 times a day, people hold their breath. Putting a key in the door, and you hold your breath for a moment. Trying to remember something, and you hold your breath. You're getting up from a chair, and you hold your breath. And so that sends an emergency signal to the brain, because breath holding is an emergency signal. Imagine an antelope chomping on the grass in the Serengeti plains, and there's a noise in the bushes. You think it's crump, crump. That holding the breath is an emergency reaction. And so people watch the news and TV, and they read the newspaper, and they don't realize that they're holding their breath every time they get a little piece of bad news, or unconsciously they've learned to hold their breath in order to stop themselves from laughing or crying. A little child, if you tell them, sit still, be quiet, they got so much energy. The only way to manage that energy is to manage their breath. And if you want to hide and be invisible, you hold your breath. You don't have to teach that antelope in the wild. If you want to be invisible, stop breathing, because you're giving away your presence. And a little 2-3-year-old girl hiding behind a couch playing hide and seek, she's holding her breath. Nobody had to teach her that. And if you're a kid in the back row of the school and the teacher's looking for somebody to ask a question about the homework and you didn't do it, you're back there hoping you can be invisible, and you're going to automatically be holding your breath. And if some toxic force is going to come down onto you, it's an instinct to, you take a breath and you hold your breath and you fight to resist that toxic force, right? And if something wants to come out of you, that's, try not to laugh. How do you stop yourself from laughing? You have to hold your breath. How do you stop yourself from crying? You got to control your breath. So we don't realize that we've been engaging in breathing behaviors our whole life, And those breathing behaviors, some of them are functional and useful, and some of them disturb our chemistry, disturb our performance, disturb everything else about us. So if you haven't consciously practiced breathing, the odds are pretty damn good that your unconscious breathing habits could use some upgrading, some up leveling, some improving. Because when you don't have time to think, it's your habits that kick in, it's your training that kicks in, and that goes along with breathing. So unless you've actually practiced breathing under stress, so that when stress comes, you automatically breathe in a better way, the odds are pretty good that you're going to launch into dysfunctional breathing, and you're going to make, if it's anxiety, for example, if you start to feel anxious, the way that you breathe when you're anxious can actually make the anxiety worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then you work yourself into an all-out panic attack.
Yeah.
And so that's where everybody needs to start. You need to just become conscious, aware of your breathing. When you're stuck in traffic, how are you breathing? When you're listening to music and enjoying it, how are you breathing? When you're stuck on a math problem trying to solve it, how are you breathing? When someone is insulting you, how are you breathing? When someone is praising you, how are you breathing? When you're making love, how are you breathing? Like, and I work with people who specialize in the sports world. How are you breathing during that stroke, during that punch, during that grab? For certain moments, breathing is everything. And unless you really have been starting to notice your own breathing habits, that's where it starts. You have to become aware. You get up in the morning, you don't have to breathe in any special way. Just tune into your breathing like you're meeting a friend who's with you all the time. How is my breath this morning? Is it easy? Is it open? Is it flowing? Do I don't feel like breathing? Am I full of energy? And just start to develop this habit to just notice how you're breathing. And that starts the whole journey, because breath awareness leads to the awareness of habits and patterns, the words that you choose, the reactions, your emotions, your posture, your behavior. The more conscious you become of your breathing, the more conscious you become of everything. The more aware you are of your breath, the more aware you are, period.
Yeah.
And so breath awareness starts the door, opens the door, and then from there, we can start practicing conscious breathing. So breath awareness, you don't even do the breathing. Your body's breathing itself. In fact, don't do it. Just tune into it, observe it, feel it, watch it, notice it, sense it. And it's just, you're forming a relationship. You're becoming more aware of what's happening inside of you. And that's going to lead to awareness of a lot of other things.
Yeah, that's very profound. I really enjoyed my experience with that second workshop that you did that I was able to attend. And that very short span, which it was about 2 hours, it was a great workshop, a lot of information. But in the grand scheme of life, in that little 2 hour time, I learned so much that I'm taken with me. And the thing about like the wheel of breathing, the attention on the nose and then the bridge of the nose and then through the throat, all of that exercise, I've been thinking about that, like expanding my lungs and then my diaphragm and becoming so aware of this. And then in our private session, you expanded on that even deeper in our actual guided session, and you were telling us, breathe in through your pores, breathe in through your bones, breathe in with your aura. And I was like, what? You can do that?
We're not just breathing air.
Yeah.
We're breathing energy. We're breathing light. That's the real art in breath work. One of my teachers said the real art is the merging of the outer breath, which is air, and merging that with the inner breath, which is spirit.
Yeah.
And in the ancient traditions, in the Jewish tradition, they have this ruach, neshemet ruach, the breath within the breath.
Mm-hmm.
And in the East, they talk about prana and chi and ki. That's the energy in the breath. Anybody can huff and puff and move a lot of air, but can you begin to breathe energy and direct energy and channel energy and train your system to tolerate more energy, receive more energy, contain more energy? And that's where the good stuff really starts to show up.
That's a great way to put it. So what's the key then, right? So you said anybody can huff and puff. So is the key properly huffing and puffing, but while also increasing that awareness of the chi or the prana or the spiritual energy?
Yeah. The awareness of the chi kind of emerges by itself. You start just noticing it more. So the if you want to look for the hack, what's the real, what's the main thing that we want to master? It's combining powerful breathing with relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when most people breathe in a powerful way, they don't relax. And when they relax, they don't breathe. And so there it is. How do you combine powerful breathing with complete relaxation? That's a skill. That's nobody can teach it. Anyone can learn it.
Right.
You can't teach it, but you can learn it. And so you want a shortcut. You could start by breathing in a real powerful way, and then as a practice, as a discipline, as a process, start relaxing more and more and more. Relax whatever you don't need to allow that breath to remain powerful. So you get the powerful breath going, and you relax more and more and more without losing the power of the breath. And the other way is you relax completely, and then you start turning up the power of the breath without losing your relaxation. And until then, maybe you can go back and forth. Active inhale, passive exhale, or active exhale, and reflexive inhale. So, you got to play. It's about playing with your breath. But there's a shortcut for you. And when those two things, when peace and power mix, when energy and relaxation blend, that's the flow. That's the zone. That's the flow state. That's when potential is unlocked. It's like I got that lesson from a good Navy SEAL friend, commander of mine, Navy SEAL commander, who said, the control, the power is about control, and the peace is about relaxation. And that combination of peace and power makes you the most dangerous guy on the battlefield. That combination of energy and relaxation, that's what opens the doors of our perception. That's when our heart opens. It's the combination. So like I live in Mexico, down in the Baja. And actually every in January, we have my 20th annual breathing gathering, Cabo Breath Fest, we call it. January 23rd to the 29th. And I invite some of my favorite breath workers from around the world, so I don't have to do all the work. I choose, and I let other people lead, and I'm catching up with what they've been doing. Anyway, so I live in Mexico in the Baja, and it's just below the Tropic of Cancer. Our property is about 100 yards below the Tropic of Cancer. So we're in the tropics, but it's arid tropics, dry tropics. And the soil there is very hard-packed, mineral-rich, but hard-packed soil. And so when it rains, the water just washes along the surface, and it tries to find the ocean. It doesn't penetrate. So, but if you loosen the soil, if you soften the soil, if you turn the soil, then when it rains, the soil drinks up the water. So this is exactly the phenomenon with breathing. You breathe in a powerful way, now you pull in a lot of energy, but if you don't relax, that energy cannot penetrate you. It can't do its work. It can't do the healing, the transformational work, or the balancing or purging or whatever's required. So it's that combination of breathing and relaxing. And so I build it into our first core technique, getting people in the game and getting moving. You want to be sure that what they're practicing, they're going to get the most bang out of their buck, right? And so to get the most bang out of your buck, you need to have three qualities. You need to unlock what I call my formula for transformation. Every time I've ever seen and experienced someone go through a deep, powerful healing, a huge transformation, a quantum leap in awakening, some powerful growth experience or healing experience, I noticed there were three things at play. There was consciousness, awareness. Now, you could go for surgery. You're totally unconscious, and they sew you up and fix it. You didn't have any part in your own healing. So being awake is like the first rule in life. Like wake up. Okay. Let's be conscious. Let's be aware. That's like primary. The second thing is you're going to be able to let go. Most problems that we're fighting with, we don't need to fight with them. We can just let them go. And the third is you got to be able to generate energy with your breath. So I get people very early on practicing breathing that makes them more conscious, helps them to relax more, and gives them the ability to generate energy. And then after that, they don't need me. You're connecting to the energy that built your body in the womb. You're connecting to the energy that comes direct from source, from the creator. You don't need a middleman. And so when you use the breath to awaken to your own spirit, hey, priests and politicians and doctors, they don't play such a dominant role in your life because you're connected to something bigger, something deeper, and you're guided by something deeper.
I love that. I have to comment on something that was so funny. My wife and my sister and I were sitting there cackling in the crowd at that Sunday panel that you participated in with the rest of the group at the conference. And let's just paint a picture, okay? So, because Nick and Alex weren't there, they don't know this. The listeners don't know this, but we were pretty much at a UFO thing, right? And I'm so curious to know, like, there's so many questions running through my mind. There's so many conditions present where I may not have been able to meet you. You could have looked at that and been like, I don't know. I'm not into UFOs. But for some grand reason, you said, hey, I'll do it. And what happened was so funny, guys, because on the last day, there's a panel of people, and they're all being asked these questions about UFOs, right? And then Dan comes around, and he gets the question. And every time he's like, just talks about breathing. And the host, God bless him, was like, no, I'm asking you about UFOs. And he just like would crack a joke at him. Everybody in the crowd erupts into laughter. You didn't, you're just doing your thing. You're just talking about your breathing. You didn't care about the program. And I thought that was amazing. I thought that was so funny. You're just like, hey, don't tell me how to breathe. Everyone in the room just erupted into laughter. It was so funny, dude.
But Tony Robbins, one of my favorite. I'm here in West Palm Beach. We've been having 4 a.m. meetings because that's the only time on his calendar that is even open. And so we've been chatting at 4 a.m. about breathing.
Yeah.
Because he's working 20 hours a day or whatever, 16, 18. And, one of the things I realized that people who've done a lot of work on themselves, they can make a little adjustment in something and they parlay that into a huge advantage, you know? So people have done a lot of work on themselves. And I mean, people who've been honest with themselves about their limitations, about their programming, their negative thoughts, their illusions, and I have to admit that UFO conference, that my bullshit meter was going off pretty regularly, but mixed in with it was like very real, very genuine, unarguable, sincere experiences. And so, I try to sort through, stuff. But I did leave with something really beautiful. It really helped me. And, I know I look at, why did I accept this invitation and why am I showing up where I'm showing up? I know that one of the main reasons was to meet your father and to meet your family. I had no doubt about that. And the other was that I was watching my internal reactions around these people and I realized the importance, and I've been practicing it everywhere since, is to be able to just listen without pushing back. To be able to, even quietly in my own mind, not pushing back. Not that I would come out and argue and stuff. That's another level of that. But just in my own, watching my own space, my own fields, the ability just grew to be able to just really listen without automatically pushing back. That's man, that's one of the reasons I'm grateful that I was there, because I had a lot of practice over that weekend.
I just thought it was masterclass performance. Like, I just want to talk about what I want to talk about, please. It was very funny. It was very graceful too, though. You were very it was very tactful, but it was memorable because exactly. The reason I even brought this up is because you said when you become connected to that source through your breathing, all of a sudden things like politicians and, whatever else you said, the news and all these, the
Yep.
priest and all these things don't matter. Maybe a room full of 300 people and a panel of interviewers is like, I'm just talking about breathing. I'm just doing my thing and enjoying my
Well,
experience here.
and these days you don't know who to believe. You don't know who's telling the truth and who's not. You don't know who's right, who's wrong. You watch the news, you don't know who's reporting it accurately or not. You can't tell who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. And so more than ever, we need to connect to an inner knowing. We
Mhm.
need to find our own compass and learn to trust our gut, our intuition, our these little things that prompt us. And that's, otherwise we're just getting blown around in the wind out there, pushed and pulled, and we could be all like lemmings just heading off the edge of a cliff, and everybody's, oh, that's what everybody's up to. So I've never fit in to the mainstream, but breathwork has become mainstream. My dream 50 years ago was they're going to be teaching breathing in schools, and doctors are going to be approving it, and science will be, and that's all happening now. But now it's creating a new problem, at least from my being a kind of an elder in this movement. There was a time when the problem was there just wasn't enough good information about breathing. And I had to go to China. I had to go to India. I had to go to the source because there was, there was lack of information. Now the problem is too much information or misinformation.
Right.
You got somebody who learns the Wim Hof technique in an hour, and then a week later they're a TikTok influencer with 1 million followers, and they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of the people in breathwork, I don't want to. It's my own field. I can put them down. There was a time when I could say I've never met a breath worker that I didn't like. Ooh, that's starting to make me have to work a little bit, because I'm finding some people are, how does the saying goes, compassionate for the cash in it. They're not suited for this work, but they see the opportunity, and they're put up on a guru pedestal. And so that's very tempting and very seductive, and the higher you get and the more serious and sacred things get, the more you need to be curbing and taming those darker elements of ourselves. Otherwise we become dangerous to the world. And so we have to be growing our heart. We have to be getting more and more into love and compassion and tolerance, and not wanting to dominate and control and overpower people or force them into things. And when you're right, it's very tempting to do that.
You brought me to a very natural point that I've been wanting to ask you, because this is something I'm fascinated in, and I think the listener would thoroughly enjoy this as well. How did you find yourself studying with Zen monks in China and yogis in India? Like, at what point in your life how did you go from being like special operations in the Navy to, okay, now I'm being whipped with a stick by Zen monks to hone in my breathing?
Because the biggest lessons and breakthroughs I had came in those life and death catastrophic situations. I drowned and I had to be resuscitated. And in that process, when I started breathing on my own again, the experience of breathing was completely in another level. Every breath was ecstatic. I was experiencing the breath from every cell in my body. And I recognized what a miracle it is. You don't know what you got till they take it away. And then you realize how important it was. And so I just learned that the hard way. I discovered the ecstatic nature in the breath, but what brought me to it were very dangerous moments, life and death kind of situations. And so when I got out of the military, I wanted people to discover what I discovered, experience what I experienced. But boy, the way that I learned it, you're not going to get a lot of people who volunteer for that kind of stuff. So I was looking for another way, a school, a style, approach, a tradition that I could see was connected to my experience and confirmed it or validated it. So that's what took me to India and China. It's what took me into the touchy-feely movement, late 60s, and the hippie movement. If you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. And and the nonviolence vow of, I was a practicing Buddhist with the vow of nonviolence. I wouldn't step on an ant, and so it was a lot of purification that was required, and some of that purification was forced on me. But I realized I couldn't force it on other people, so I had to find paths or traditions that resulted in that. And that's why I ended up in India and China. They've been studying the breath for thousands of years. They've worked out some really good hacks and some really good processes and techniques, and we can sort of tweak them, shape them for our current modern times. And it's like a prescription. Here, play with this, try this. And so it was my search for, how do I communicate what's you can't put any words to? It's like there's a course called the Course in Miracles. I don't know if you've heard of a course called the Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a beautiful quote in there that says, a universal theology is impossible. And that makes sense. You're never going to get Jews and Muslims and Christians and Catholics and Buddhists to all agree on a single theology. So
we were talking about that last night, actually.
Yeah. So a universal theology is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But a universal experience is not only possible, it's necessary. And I'm convinced that breathing is that universal experience.
Wow.
And so I've been to 73 countries, every religion, every race, every age, every job, every career, you name it. And it's true. Here's one of these universal principles, applies to everybody. If you got a belly button, then if it worked for somebody else, it's a good chance it's going to work for you. And so I went to the East, to India. I practiced those things because in the first place, there was no other way to go. I mean, they don't teach it in schools, not a university course. You don't find breathing corners like where there's more CVS pharmacies. We should have breathing clinics where there was every pharmacy, but there wasn't. So I had no choice. I had to travel to the East and start hunting down people who really embodied a tradition, and they didn't just read it in a book. Somebody just didn't tell it to them. They embodied it. They own that knowledge, and from that you can catch it from people.
Yeah.
It's not what you say, it's not what you do, it's who you are. That's what gets communicated. That's what does the healing work. My presence, presence is much more important than words or techniques. And so breathing, that's we're working on the level of pure presence, pure being.
Yeah. That's profound. And also to put it into context, I mean, I seem to recall you saying, you've been doing this for 50 years. I can't imagine, 50 years ago, just like stomping the grounds of India and China and all these, 70 different countries trying to track down this knowledge. It's not like you said, now, I learned the Wim Hof breathing method and now I'm an influencer. Yeah. It's like, it wasn't like that. I mean, 50 years ago, it's a whole different world. And I'm willing to bet a lot of this was probably really taboo and not very easy to track. So it's very admirable, this path that you've gone down. And it does remind me a little bit of my father in the sense that both of you had these kind of very profound experiences in your youth. I guess you know this now, but my dad was shot by a shotgun when he was a child.
Yeah, he's still got pellets in his body, right?
He does. Yeah, he actually does. And hearing your story and your near-death experiences, it reminds me of my father. And also, I mean, you guys are pretty close in age. You've got a couple years on him, but you guys are close in age. So what I mean to say is you both have that aura of lived wisdom that I find so valuable, having a father who has, been teaching me, because I'm pretty aware of things. And I know that, like, as a child, just for example, we've been doing this almost 20 years, this whole UFO thing. And as a teenager, my dad would tell me these things. You got to have positive thinking, son. You got to, you got to think about this. You got to think about that. And as a teenager, I'm like, I don't believe that. You know what I mean? This is stupid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And now I'm in my 30s and I look back and I think there was so much wisdom that
he knew what he was
he
talking
knew
about.
what he was saying.
Yeah.
And just like now in my age, I see the being behind his eyes as he tells me these things. And I know now, okay, yeah, I'm not going to dare to challenge his wisdom. How arrogant of me, when I was a child, I believed that I knew, but now as I'm growing into adulthood, I'm like, okay, wow, I really, really should listen when he tells me
And I'll
something.
tell you, your father doesn't come off like he knows everything either.
Right.
He's so open, and he readily admits that he doesn't really understand what's going on. And
Yeah.
hey, a mystery in life is fine, but even when we think we understand something, it's only to the point of our current level of development. As soon as you grow, as soon as you mature, as soon as you evolve, you have a new understanding, a higher understanding. And then you thought, wow, I thought I understood it, but now I really do. And sure enough, growth happens and you go, wow, okay, there's no end to this. I'm not gonna crystallize anything as carved in stone, because it seems like I'm getting deeper insights. I'm getting better understanding the more I grow. And if I lock onto a position and I dig my heels in, I just stop the whole process of true understanding and growth, because it evolves as we do. I mean, we used to think, well, look in the Bible, they're talking about chariots of fire. Well, now with some of the UFO sightings, we're going, I wonder, And so call it what you want. There is something happening out there. There's more to life than we realize. And that should be our focus, to uncover and awaken to things that are surrounding us, all around us, filling us, and we're oblivious to them. Wake up. We know that when I look out at the world, I'm looking at a very narrow range of the whole electromagnetic spectrum. I'm missing more than I'm getting. My senses are actually limiting more of the reality than they are opening me to.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm a believer in the heart. And that's why I'm a believer in connecting with the energy that's in the stars, it's in the rocks, it's in the trees, it's in me, it's in you. It surrounds us, it infuses us. And if we can connect with that energy, then we're going to have the support of the universe, and we're going to start to see ourselves reflected in each other. I see myself in you, I see you in myself, and that's heart intelligence.
Yeah.
And it used to be, if you wanted to survive in this world, you had to be fast and you had to be strong, and that's who survived. And then along came smart. And then if you were smart enough, you could beat out the fast and the strong. Smart trumps fast and strong. But now some of the worst things that are being perpetrated on the planet are being done by some very smart people, intelligent, high IQs. And so now and into the future, it's not who's strong, who's fast, who's smart. It's who's most conscious, who's most awake. That's where we should be focusing on, raising our consciousness, expanding our consciousness, refining our consciousness. And that's the direct result or benefit of breathing practices. That's where most of the benefit occurs in breath work, is on the level of consciousness.
Yeah, no, that's so profound. Just being there that night when we did that private session, my mother, you didn't know my mother before, right?
No,
But
no.
maybe you have a little more context after finishing the book tonight, which, towards the end when we're closing out, I'd love to quickly get your thoughts on that, because we've kind of glanced past it. But if you really know my mother, you know that she's really not open to this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very closed off against this. And she's never done a meditation. She's never done anything extra normal. Let's just say that. But Dan, for whatever it's worth, I wanted you to hear this that night, because after you left, she told me this. She said, I knew that whatever he was going to guide us through, I just should not question it, and I should just go with it. You are the first that she ever met. And we've met a lot of people, just like, as I'm sure you have, being out there doing your thing. We've met quite a lot of people, not 300,000, but maybe in 30 years, maybe, but it's a lot. And she has never met anybody that she felt safe doing some sort of meditation or practice with or whatever. And when you saw her, she was streaming tears. She was kind of babbling. She didn't even know how to describe what was happening. And we were laughing. And she's like, "You guys are laughing at me." We're like, "No, Mom, we're not laughing at you. We're laughing for you." You know?
Laughing at life.
Yeah. And what happened was she had a genuine expansion of consciousness after his meditation, and she was describing her mind expanded, and she could feel the suffering of all these other people in her life that at some point she was very, very closed off from. It was a real expansion. And Dan just giggled, just like you just laughed, and you didn't really have anything other than to say or anything to say other than, that's great. And that's what I was saying. That's great, Mom. We're not laughing at you. That's great. She was stunned. She didn't.
I guess I've grown kind of cavalier and sort of things that are really unusual and beautiful. They become so ordinary for me. I'm
Right.
not acknowledging it enough when other people have the experience, because I'm going, well, what else is new?
Right. That's why we were laughing too. That's why my sister and I, my dad and my wife, we were laughing, because it's like, hello, finally. It was a beautiful thing. And that was a powerful experience. So I wanted to thank you for facilitating that for my mother, because she's never experienced anything like that. And I think it was
Beautiful.
you were talking about transformational, like leaps and bounds consciousness experiences. I believe that night my family experienced one going through this with you. And we may have experienced some of these kinds of things on some level with other people, but that night was different, and it was profound, and it was really a gift to us. But
Great to hear.
yeah, thank you. And I wanted to ask, like, what were your thoughts on the book? Because we kind of breezed past that. Did you know?
Yeah. To do this work in the purest way, you need to give one person all of your attention and watch every breath they take and keep up to each thing and keep helping them make subtle adjustments. So when you're trying to teach 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 groups of people, you can't focus on any one and follow them through their whole process. You can just touch on different people at different points and try to, like, what's the one piece of advice that everybody can benefit from, because everybody's at a different place in their process and at a different point in their development, and each of our inner worlds is so very different. So I try to just focus on fundamentals in the beginning, and trying to guide in a way that no matter where you're at, no matter what you're going through, it can help. Now, if I were to work just with your mother, just with your father, just with you, then I could watch every single breath.
Right.
I can sense, I can feel, and my intuition guides me, and I can observe little things. And so that's the best way to make use of this process, to get the most out of it. But it's not scalable. I can't literally work with every single person in the world.
Right.
So I have to develop methods and styles and processes that can affect more people without giving them something that wasn't meant for them. Like I work with Tony Robbins, so he'll do an event, 10,000 people, whatever. I don't know what the percentage are, but something like 3%, 5%, or whatever of the population is suicidal. So do the math. In a room with 10,000 people, you got 40, 50 at least suicidal people who can take whatever you say and do and use it to deepen their suicidal tendencies.
Right.
So, and you got to account for that. Some people have heart problems, and you don't want them doing these powerful cathartic breathing. Some people are schizophrenic, and you don't want them playing with weird kind of multi-dimensional experiences and stuff. So we got to try to not water it down, but keep the process gentle so everyone's included. And first, do no harm.
Yeah.
Come from the medical world.
That makes sense.
So, but you guys were similar in a lot of ways. Your vibes are very similar. and the general level of care and compassion and support for each other was so beautiful to see and easy to feel. And so I don't even remember what I said. I don't remember how I guide you. I was just riffing the whole time, but I'm feeding off of whatever I'm picking up and
Right.
trusting it, you know?
Yeah, it's coming from source. I felt that from you. I really did feel that. I felt that there was no script and you were just truly just like riding a wave of spirit, because you would say things, you would like something you said that really impacted my mother was you said, imagine someone raises his hand to harm a child and you send a loving wave of energy, a thought towards this man. Now he something like and he won't strike that child because
Yeah.
of your loving energy. And you just said all these different sayings and phrases, and it was just really deep. And I was just like going really deep into it. And
Oh, yeah. A heartfelt intention powered by the heart can change the world, no doubt about it. I mean, every day, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of Buddhists face the four directions of the compass, and they just put out peaceful vibrations.
yeah,
And as screwed up as the world is, it'd be a lot worse if people weren't doing stuff like that. And every thought we have contributes to this collective consciousness. And what do you want to be contributing, you know? And so it behooves us to very consciously and very deliberately. And I use that a lot at my seminars because it happened to me and it was something really real. And I use this model. You throw a stone out in the water, a calm lake, and you see the circle wave go out. So every time we breathe and we put a heartfelt intention behind it, it's like throwing a stone in that lake and that wave goes out. And that wave of peace or love or compassion, it's passing through everything and everyone. And at some point, it could be just passing through somebody just at that moment they're going to hurt. And that wave happened to pass through them and it caused them to pause. I'm sure that things like that happen because of our loving intention. The vibrations that we put out in the world affect other people. So.
yeah. No, I completely agree. So anyway, thank you again for that experience and providing that space for consciousness expansion. It was very profound. And yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a very natural closing point. Is there anything that you'd be willing to, like, if there was, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I have been thinking about this today, that this, if you were comfortable, it could be really cool. Could we do like a very brief moment of like some sort of relaxed breathing for the listener? It could be very brief.
No, yeah, let's do it, because everybody carries pain and stress and tension in their body, and it's there all the time and they don't even notice it. And so it's a good idea to just do some very conscious practice to vent stress and to bring in positive energy. So every breath is an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So I have two core techniques that I teach everybody, because they're not even techniques. They're natural responses in the body that when you do them consciously, you can really up the benefit. One is a sigh of relief. So I say sigh of relief and everybody knows exactly what I mean. That means you know how to do a sigh of relief. You recognize it when it happens, you can observe it in somebody else, and you know what it feels like in you. So all you need to do is give yourself a sigh of relief. However, do it very consciously, much more consciously than usual. Exaggerate it, dramatize it, make it theatrical. Exaggerate the sigh of relief. And what are all the qualities? So a sigh of relief begins with an inhale that is twice as big as your average breath. That's the medical definition or description of a sigh. We think of it in terms of the exhale. But in order for that sigh to occur, you needed a big inhale in front of it. And that inhale needs to have an extra stretch, extra expansion. So you literally take an in-breath, an inhale that's twice as big as normal. Now you've created that extra expansion, that extra stretch, and when you release it, power behind it. You don't have to do anything. It happens to you. It's a wave of peace and relaxation, because relaxation isn't a doing. People talk about, hey, relax, relax, as if it's a verb, as if it's something you need to do. But relaxation is non-doing. It's undoing, right? And so you do the inhale and take your time. When you're breathing in, get your skill down that you can extend your inhale for 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds. 10 seconds would be great. Then you have real time to track the sensations of expansion, side to side, front to back, top to bottom. So you take your time on the inhale and make it a meditation. You're tuning into the details, feeling the expansion, the stretching, the opening, the expanding. And then you reach that full point and you snap the exhale loose. You dump the exhale out. You let it go. You set it free. And when you do, let go of your jaw. See, most people, their jaw, they have a place where the jaw sets all the time. Some people even grind their teeth in their sleep. And, they have TMJ problems because there's constant chronic tightness in their jaw. So every time you exhale, for that moment that you release the exhale, release your jaw. For that moment that you release the exhale, release your shoulders. And you can go through your body like that. And you can go from head to toe. Every time you exhale, relax a muscle, relax a joint. At the same time that you're exhaling, if you relax a muscle, when you relax, something opens, something softens. And then the breath can take away whatever now is exposed, has been open. If you just breathe without relaxing, you can't release anything. If you relax without breathing, you can't release anything. So every time you exhale, let go. Let go of a negative thought. Let go of anger. Let go of confusion. Start by letting go of muscles and joints. And then you let go of the past. And then you let go of anger. You let go of whatever, prejudice, bias, whatever. The letting go gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So just a sigh of relief. Exaggerate it. Turn it into a meditation. So when you breathe in, what's your favorite fragrance? What can you think about that will make you feel beautiful? I can think of many, many things. I focus on my friends, my family, my child, a day in Hawaii on the beach, whatever. I can just the smell of lilacs, moments from childhood, whatever gives you joy, pleasure while you're breathing in, just bring it to mind. And then when you exhale, really let go. Don't be afraid to let go. And layer by layer, you're going to start washing tension out of your system. A simple sigh of relief done creatively, exaggerated, add visualization to it, add affirmations to it. So, for example, the first time I learned that principle was from Ram Dass. And he said, hey, when you breathe in, think to yourself, the power of God is within me. And when you breathe out, think to yourself, the grace of God surrounds me. And I was in an event with him, and we all just started doing that. Breathing in, the power of God is within me. Breathing out, the grace of God surrounds me. And in and out, repeating that phrase, and you were programming yourself in a very beautiful way. And from that day, I've never been able to breathe without thinking about God. And I've never been able to think about God without taking a breath. In NLP, I think they call that anchoring. So what you do is you practice a sigh of relief and you use it as an anchoring technique to shift your state, to return to a comfortable state, wake yourself up if that's what you need, calm yourself down if that's what you need. And just by playing with the sigh of relief, you don't need any complicated techniques, just a sigh of relief, right? And then so that's one core technique, a long inhale. Think about something beautiful, enjoy the sensations, get in your body, imagine breathing light, repeat some powerful affirmation to yourself, and then let go and relax physically. And while you're exhaling, something can pour into you. So we can actively pull something in. What kind of energy do you want to fill yourself with? strength, courage, freedom, intelligence, wisdom, love, compassion. If you know yourself and how can I improve myself, I need to be more patient. Okay, when I breathe in, I'm going to be patient with my inhale. I'm going to tell myself that I'm becoming more patient. I'm going to remind myself that it's important. I'm going to remember moments when I was patient and I'm glad I was. And then I'm just going to let go. And as I empty myself, nature abhors a vacuum. So as I'm exhaling, some energy can be coming in. So I can give to myself with the inhale and I can receive on the exhale.
Okay.
And you just need to play with the sigh of relief. Do it fast, do it slow, do it through your nose, do it through your mouth. Pretend you're angry when you do it. Pretend you're sad when you do it. Pretend you're hilariously, laughing at something when you do it. Just sigh of relief. And the second technique, and these both come from my work way back in military, special forces, survival training and everything. The second is, now it's called tactical breathing, but I originally called it circular breathing, connected breathing. That is inhale, exhale, in. So no pauses, no gaps, no breath holding. And you combine that with a sigh of relief. So as a takeaway exercise, let's do it right now. We can do a couple versions. 20 connected breaths. And that means you're going to count them. You're going to do 20 breaths, 4 short breaths, 1 long, 4 short, 1 long, 4 short, 1 long, 4 short, 1 long. That long breath, that every 5th breath is a big sigh of relief. And the other 4 breaths is like spinning a wheel. So it's like this. And then notice your energy. What just moved? What changed in your body?
Okay. 4 cycles of this.
4 cycles of 5 breath, every 5th breath. And you can do different versions. For example, or they could be so the same pattern can be done in a subtle way, in an intense way, fast, slow, through your nose, through your mouth, standing on your head, laying on your back, laying on your stomach. You take that one simple practice, 20 connected breaths, and in a very short time, you'll be able to use that to interrupt the pattern. You start getting tired or irritated, okay? Do 20 connected breaths, you're going to be in a completely different state. Guaranteed.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you want us to do this live, or are you just saying?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's
ready?
do it. Everybody pick your own pace, your own speed, your own volume. I suggest doing it through the mouth because it brings up a lot of feelings and sensations quicker than through the nose. But either way is good. Whichever way you do it again, but do a different version of it. So if you did it through your nose the first time, do it through your mouth the second time. Like if you did it gentle and slow the first time, do it fast and powerful the second time. Mix it up and get different versions of it, but keep to the same general pattern. A few short breaths and a big sigh of relief. And in the beginning, 4-1-4-1, just to get you in the game.
Okay. We ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. I think that was 20 for me. I'm going to be honest, I lost count.
I'm lightheaded.
That's a good sign.
Whoa. Oh my God, I'm fuzzy.
Yeah.
Whoa. I'm so lightheaded.
I was counting on my right hand, and I was pretty sure I did 4 cycles, so I stopped early. But someone will probably count and be like, "You skipped one." But
Whoa, what a head rush.
Hey, listen, keep practicing until that doesn't happen.
the head
Because
rush.
it'll
Yeah.
pass. Those are surface reactions of the system to getting energy moving. So at first we get dizzy, or we get a dry throat, or you get tingling.
Yeah.
All that's
tingly.
energy activating stuff. And so you just got to repeat it. And once it clears away a whole bunch of stuff, there's something under that. Under every feeling is another feeling. So in the first few practices, certain feelings and sensations come up. But if you keep practicing, they go away and new things start happening. And that's why I'm still doing this work after 50 years, because there seems to be no end.
Yeah.
There seems to be no limit. No matter how much we clear away, we find another layer. No matter how high we get, we find out that there's a much higher mountain behind this peak, and there's no end to it. So
Wow.
that's a very simple practice. And if you remember the fundamentals, so if you practice any breathing technique, do it consciously. Be total. Focus 100%. That in itself is powerful. The ability to gather all your energy and focus it totally, and not be 10% here, 10% there, sort of interested in this, but also, you're scattering all your energy. You can't create anything. So this is a good exercise to be total, really focused, and don't use any muscles that are unnecessary. Like, I have a principle called the effort to energy ratio. So if people are breathing deep, if you get a certain amount of energy from every breath you take, and it costs you a certain amount of energy to breathe every breath. And some people, it's costing them so much energy to breathe that they don't have energy left. It's like bad business. So you got to practice getting economical and efficient and elegant with your breathing and graceful. So it's not costing you a lot of energy. And then all the energy you're getting is available to do healing and growth work. And it's not just being used up by the process itself. So just remember the basic principles and play, and you'll get somewhere.
I definitely feel shifted after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like a different person.
Like I'd look at the clock and I'm like, oh my God, it's been an hour and 30, but it feels like I forgot the whole conversation for a moment. I forgot what we were doing.
Forgive me. I got no off button, man. Once you get me talking about breathing.
No, I love it. I love it.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I hope some of what we do is going to help your listeners, your watchers. And if they want more support, breathmastery.com. I bomb you with so many extra free courses and transcripts. And I send a breathing technique out every week, one specific exercise, so you can practice something different. I have a monthly newsletter where I write an article about breathing. I've written an article about breathing every month since June of 1976.
Wow.
And I haven't missed a month. Yeah, I was at the
God.
University of Hawaii, University of Massachusetts, when I started my monthly breathing reports, and I've never missed a month since then.
Wow. That's amazing. Oh my God.
I'm a fanatic, no doubt about it. I'm obsessed.
That's truly amazing. I have to admit that after doing that little breathing exercise, it kind of like jolted me. I'm like off from podcaster mode right now. I'm like just kind of experiencing that new state. I feel this like buzzing in my head and like kind of like pulsing on my third eye area, which ever since last week when we had that session and you had the whole thing about like relax your forehead muscles, at every moment of every day I've been focused on trying to relax my forehead muscles. And right now I feel it after that breathing thing. So I'm definitely going to practice this. So thank you for that. That was a gift.
Good.
And this has been amazing. Maybe a note to ourselves is when we're doing an interview, don't alter our consciousness. Like, where do we
just
go from
remember
here,
to take a breath once in a while. That's all. Just stop whatever you're doing, and then go back to what you're doing. Just remember to take a breath once in a while. That changes everything.
I meant to ask, what's the benefit of that little butterfly breathing method that we were doing? I've been kind of doing that.
Yeah, I got that from, I was working with people who were on chemo, or with people with migraines, or nausea gets triggered very easy, or they're in real horrible pain and the breathing seems to intensify the pain. So we developed what's called subtle energy breathing, little butterfly breaths, like, as delicate as the wings of a butterfly. And so you start with a very soft, delicate breathing pattern that doesn't disturb anything, doesn't trigger anything. And then you grow it and grow it and grow it. And layer by layer, you're cleaning stuff out, you're clearing stuff, you're recharging, you're healing, you're balancing. So yeah, I call it butterfly breathing, but subtle energy breathing also. Yep.
I really enjoyed that technique. Well, thank you. If you stay here, I'm going to keep you locked in all night and ask you all kinds of questions. So I think this is a beautiful natural stopping point. And also, by the way, your app. Let's mention your app. Right?
Oh, yeah, Breath Tech. Good luck. I was on my phone today. The developers are tweaking and doing things. I don't know if it's even working at the moment, but I've been watching the thread with the developers going back and forth and doing little fixes. So yeah, Breath Tech, you can find it in the App Store. It's an ugly color green, olive, weird color green screen. Breath Tech. You'll find it in the App Store. And it's very useful. I'm really proud of it. You get the 3 cornerstones, which I mentioned. You can practicing breathing for becoming more mindful, practicing breathing for relaxation, and practicing breathing for energizing. And with those 3 skills, you can start to really build. Yeah. And so, the app has we have like 8 paths why people come to breathwork: physical healing, psycho-emotional healing, personal growth, business performance, sports performance, healing the healer, helping the helper, creativity, artists, performing artists, so on, and spirituality. So there's 8 paths, and you can pick your path, and you complete one, and you can go down another. And if you complete all the paths, you graduate, you grow, you ascend from student to apprentice to teacher to master and up. And we have everyday breathing exercises in there, hangover breath, stuck in traffic, 2 o'clock sugar crash, very practical breathing for very everyday practical stuff. And in there, I also have my basic series, because for a long time, I was teaching only my basic series. And it was like, okay, if I can only teach 5 or 6 breathing exercises, if people get these under their belt, then anything else they practice, they're going to get a lot more benefit out of than if they hadn't learned this what I call the basic series. So that's in there too. And there's video lessons, there's audio guided lessons, there's an article about each lesson. So it's pretty comprehensive. I'm really pleased with it. It turned out to be a much bigger job than we all expected. And there's a lot of tweaking going on right now. But thank you for mentioning that. Download Breath Tech app.
You're very welcome. Dan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been a wonderful episode. I do believe the listeners will have a lot to glean from this. So we do have a very simple little exit ritual for our show. And it is literally at the same time, we all just say bye, guys. And it's not that serious. But whenever you're ready, you ready?
Yep.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. What up, homies?
If you like the show and want more, check out patreon.com/Bledsoe said so.
This will get you exclusive weekly bonus shows and access to our Discord community with hundreds of open-minded people just like you.
If you want to represent the show, go to bledsoesaidso.com for merch. We have t-shirts, hats, hoodies, and more.
For all future updates, follow us on Instagram at Bledsoe said so.
Same time next week.